Coming to you from the Ground Zero Radio Studio at the Vera Project, this is the TeenTix Art Podcast, or TAP for short. We're all part of TeenTix programs, which work to emphasize youth voices in the arts. I'm Dylan, a member of the New Guard, a branch of TeenTix that specializes in arts leadership. We organize and plan TeenTix events and partnerships.
I'm Lucia, a member of the blog's Teen Editorial Staff, or TEDS, and we're this episode's hosts. Today, we'll take a look at the exciting events coming up in April.
So, Lucia, what's on tap today?
Well, Dylan, we are going to cover a variety of art happenings, starting with Other Rooms with Pamela Z from On the Boards, an in-person performance at the Merrill Theater on Thursday, May 5th, and Saturday, May 7th at 8 p.m. Pamela Z is a composer and media artist who's performing for the first time at On the Boards.
What made this event stick out to you, Lucia?
Well, I've always been interested in music, but after taking an electronic music class, I find I've had a new appreciation for the work that artists like Pamela Z do. The combination of art and tech you see in her work really requires a lot of skill for your instrument, whatever it may be. And, we don't cover performances like this much at TeenTix. Mediums like theater and visual art are more straightforward almost to talk about in news coverage like ours, but it's always great to cover something more unique as well.
That sounds incredible. I most certainly about the manipulation of sound and imagery. I actually think I've seen a video of her performance, and it was just absolutely astounding. With just a move of her hand, she manipulates the notes that she sings, making it higher and lower in decibels and pitch, as well as abruptly stopping the notes with a sharp staccato.
I know her technical skill is really incredible to watch.
I actually think one of my friends went to a concert of hers completely not knowing what to expect and then receiving a performance that changed their perspective of music forever. I encourage all of you viewers to, if you can't make the performance, at least watch a video of her. It's very fascinating watching her, and at least in the videos I've seen, making a song out of thin air, completely improvised, is just amazing. Speaking of more music, the next event on our list is Love, Trouble, and the Blues, a reading and conversation around Masquerade done virtually through Hugo House on April 12th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Three poet friends, Caroline Wright, Gary Copeland, and David Rigsby, come together to discuss their most recent work, including Caroline Wright's Masquerade. Masquerade is a jazz-inflected memoir and poetry set in pre-Katrina New Orleans and Seattle, surrounding an interracial artist-writer couple. The two are struggling to find a place in the contrasting cultures of each other's families, with trust issues and political dislocations, all in the foreground of America's racist social history.
Such an interesting piece. I know that a lot of society's issues are so big and overwhelming that they seem almost impossible to combat on your own. A piece like this, taking the time to focus on interpersonal relationships in relation to these issues, gives us a more grounded lens with which to deal with them. The way they address it through their poetry and music makes it the perfect thought-provoking piece for arts lovers. And as we talked about with Pamela Z, it's great to cover some more unconventional art mediums.
I can see how the 20th century's global problem, the color line, as W.E.B. Du Bois named it, is enacted here in microcosm between these lovers and fellow artists who must face their own fears and unresolved conflicts in each other. Similar stories have mostly been told from the male protagonist's point of view. Masquerade is unique in foregrounding the female perspective. Caroline Wright, who has been through all forms of love, trouble, and the blues, has truly made a masterpiece.
Next up, we have Revolution of Our Times, which is running virtually at SIF from April 8th to April 10th. It's a documentary by Kiwi Chow that follows the Hong Kong protests in 2019, an honest retelling of such a critical event in modern history. As we all know, struggles for freedom feel especially relevant given the current Russia-Ukraine war and political turmoil around the globe. Revolution of Our Times embraces its relevance by covering the greater global trends of the Hong Kong protests as well.
Wow, that sounds like such an inspiring documentary. I've heard about the film and watched the trailer, which literally gave me chills. Exposure of this issue is incredibly important, and I think that most of the issues on this topic have been largely suppressed by the CCP. One of my closest friends is from Hong Kong and moved here only a few years ago. She's noted how fast the conflict has grown, especially with the pandemic, and how even though she had just come from there, it's already changed so rapidly. She told me that although she never participated in the protests herself, The government has still thrown tear gas at her on walks home. The Chinese government's crackdowns of both COVID and the protests have made Hong Kong a very strict place to be.
I know, and it's great to see how a film like this can be used to combat said government censorship. Speaking of films, are there any movies coming up that you're interested in, Dylan?
You know, coincidentally, our next piece is through the Northwest Film Forum, an interesting one titled as The Sleeping Negro by Black filmmaker Skinner Myers. It's about a young black man who, after a series of racially charged incidents, must conquer his rage, alienation, and hopelessness in order to find his own humanity. The main character, known only as Man, must discover the meaning of his blackness when his white boss orders him to commit fraud on behalf of the company. In this radical film, Skinner Myers tells a personal story as a means to express his feelings as a black man in America.
This looks like such an incredible piece. I know that nowadays there are calls in the arts world to share your story, especially when you're a part of a group whose story hasn't been told rightfully or at all, but Myers goes beyond that by being unapologetic and authentic. All too often, artists are forced to compromise their truth for the sake of what's more palatable to the public.
Yeah, from the intriguing trailer, this movie is incredibly moving. I love how the interconnected confusion of workplace hierarchy and race plays such an interesting and oftentimes confusing part of man's great journey through his feelings of alienation and his morals in his attempt to eliminate that alienation.
Dylan, I think that there are some really great pieces on tap this spring. From poetry to film, we've got something for every Seattleite tuning in today, and as the weather gets less and less rainy, it's a great way to get your family involved and to enjoy the sun. Make sure you go check out these incredible events at some point this month.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, Lucia, with your TeenTix Pass, if you didn't know, you have access to view these art happenings. And if you don't have a TeenTix Pass, it's the easiest thing ever. Just sign up on teentix.org for free, and you can go to events for just $5.
I know I'll be using my TeenTix Pass to see some of these great events that we've talked about. Once again, I'm Lucia.
And I'm Dylan.
We just wanted to say thank you for tuning into the TeenTix Arts podcast at Ground Zero Radio, where we listen to be heard.
A big thank you to TeenTix, Ground Zero Radio, and the Vera Project for supporting the production of this podcast.
You can find us on our blog at teentix.org/blog or on the TeenTix YouTube and SoundCloud channels. You can find details for each event we've mentioned here in the description.
The music in this episode is Ain't Basic, brought to you by Totem Star recording artist Zoser.
Join TeenTix again next month to find out what's on tap.
Thanks for listening.